what we consider real art is a movie that does not have a safety net. Godfather 1 did not have a safety net. Godfather 2 did not have a safety net. Apocalypse Now did not have a safety net.
Imagine risking everything you own, your home, your business, and even your sanity, for a single project. Now, imagine that project spiraling out of control, nearly killing you, and leaving everyone around you scarred for life. This is the story of Francis Ford Coppola and Apocalypse Now, a film that turned into a living nightmare. Typhoons destroyed sets, actors had breakdowns, and Coppola himself teetered on the edge of madness, gambling millions he didn't have. Yet somehow, out of this chaos came a masterpiece that redefined cinema. But was it worth the cost? Let's uncover the full shocking story. Francis Ford Coppola's rise to fame truly began with The Godfather in 1972. It became one of the highest-grossing films of the 1970s and is now considered one of the greatest American films ever made. Coppola faced immense challenges during production. Paramount's head of production, Robert Evans, often clashed with him over creative choices, like where to film, who to cast, and even setting the story in the 1940s. Coppola was almost fired multiple times, but stood his ground. In the end, the film earned him an Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay and a nomination for Best Director. But the success of The Godfather wasn't all positive for Coppola. It brought pressure that he wasn't prepared for. He once said, "The Godfather destroyed me," referring to how the weight of expectations took a toll on him. In 1975, Coppola made a bold decision to take over the film Apocalypse Now from George Lucas. He believed it would be a straightforward project, famously saying, "I'll have no trouble financing it, everyone will want to see it." But he couldn't have been more wrong. He faced rejection from all the major Hollywood studios. And the reasons were clear. The movie was based on Vietnam War, which had just ended, and it was still a sensitive topic. People in the US were divided, and studios feared backlash. Coppola's ideas for the film were also ambitious and risky, which made executives worry about its chances of success. Determined to make the film his way, Coppola decided to finance Apocalypse Now himself. This was a huge gamble. He started by investing $30 million of his own money, a massive amount in the 1970s, and the equivalent of $120 million today. Coppola wanted full creative freedom, and by putting up his own money, he made sure no one could interfere. When costs continued to rise, Coppola had to find more money to keep the film going. In 1976, he made an extreme decision. He mortgaged his home in Northern California and his beloved Inglenook winery in Napa Valley to raise another $30 million. This was a desperate move because the winery was not just a financial investment, but also something he deeply cared about. Coppola knew the risks. If the movie failed, he would lose both his home and the winery. It was a level of personal sacrifice rarely seen in Hollywood. One of Coppola's boldest moves was his insistence on owning the film's negative. In Hollywood, studios traditionally kept the rights to the negative, giving them control over distribution and profits. Coppola wanted to change this system. By owning the negative, he would have complete control over the film and its earnings. This was a groundbreaking demand, and a major reason why many studios refused to finance the movie. Eventually, Coppola struck a deal with United Artists that allowed him to keep the negative, making him one of the few filmmakers to achieve this level of control. This deal meant that Coppola owned all the profits from the film, except for shares promised to key figures like Marlon Brando, who earned 11.3% of the movie's earnings for just 4 weeks of work. Coppola's earnings weren't tied to United Artists' advertising costs, giving him even more control over the financial side. When the production of Apocalypse Now started, It was nothing short of a nightmare. What started as a planned 17-week shoot turned into an exhausting 238-day ordeal, stretching from March 20th, 1976, to May 21st, 1977. The production spiraled out of control, both in time and cost, ballooning from its original $12 million budget to a staggering $30 million. This marathon shoot pushed everyone involved to their limits, especially director Francis Ford Coppola, who became increasingly unpredictable. At just 37 years old, Coppola struggled with the immense stress, even throwing himself a lavish $8,000 birthday party amid the chaos. The harsh conditions in the Philippines added to the pressure. The cast and crew faced unbearable heat, rampant drug use, and dangerous working conditions. Cocaine and marijuana were everywhere, and even those operating heavy machinery were often under the influence. In one horrifying incident, a crew member almost lost his life to a helicopter rotor blade while intoxicated. Coppola's constant rewriting of the script added to the chaos, with changes often made just hours before shooting. Nature wasn't kind to the production either. On October 20th, 1976, Typhoon Olga struck the Philippines, devastating many of the film's sets, including the intricate Kurtz compound. The storm destroyed props, costumes, and equipment, while leaving crew members stranded in hotels without basic necessities like electricity or clean water. Coppola, meanwhile, stayed in a hotel, allegedly in questionable company, adding to tensions. The storm forced a 3-month shutdown and millions in additional costs. In its wake, Coppola had to renegotiate contracts with actors and secure a $3 million loan to keep the production afloat. If the film failed to make $40 million, Coppola would have been personally responsible for the debt. As if that weren't enough, the Filipino military, initially supportive of the film, frequently withdrew helicopters for real combat against communist insurgents. Pilots would abandon scenes mid-shot, leaving the crew scrambling. Each time the helicopters returned, they had to be repainted with U.S. Army colors, a process that delayed filming and cost over $100,000. Coppola later claimed that some pilots were flying under the influence of drugs, further escalating the danger. In one terrifying moment, a pilot nearly crashed a helicopter into a crowd of extras, narrowly avoiding disaster. The struggles extended to the cast. Just a month into filming, Coppola decided to replace lead actor Harvey Keitel with Martin Sheen, feeling Keitel's intense acting didn't suit the introspective role of Captain Willard. This decision cost millions and delayed production, while Sheen, battling his own personal demons, joined the set. Sheen brought the complexity Coppola wanted, but his struggles with alcohol and the grueling shoot led to a near-fatal heart attack in March 1977. Alone in his room, Sheen crawled out in pain and was rushed to a local clinic before being airlifted to Manila. His wife flew in, whispering, "It's only a movie, babe," a grounding reminder amidst the chaos. The production paused for a month, during which Coppola filmed other scenes and even used Sheen's son, Charlie, as a stand-in for distant shots. Remarkably, Sheen returned to finish his performance, which became one of the most iconic in film history. Adding to the madness, Marlon Brando arrived late, unprepared, and significantly overweight for his role as Colonel Kurtz. At nearly 300 pounds, he didn't fit the image of a lean Green Beret living in the jungle, forcing Coppola to adjust the script and film Brando, mostly in shadows to mask his size. Despite not having read the source material or script, Brando's improvisational style and screen presence turned Kurtz into a haunting figure, cementing his place as one of the film's most memorable characters. The chaos of Apocalypse Now was really felt by Coppola. By mid-1976, he was hospitalized for malnutrition and dehydration, marking the beginning of a mental and physical breakdown. The stress wasn't just financial. Coppola experimented with cannabis, hoping it would help him connect with his crew, but it only worsened his paranoia. While cast members like Dennis Hopper openly used drugs like cocaine and Martin Sheen struggled with alcohol, Coppola's use of marijuana had a unique impact. Initially, it seemed harmless, even helpful, but soon it heightened his anxiety and irrational fears. He became erratic, wandering the set shirtless with Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness in hand, muttering about his nightmare of choice. The pressure reached a terrifying peak when Coppola suffered an epileptic seizure on set. This occurred after Martin Sheen had a heart attack, adding to the already overwhelming delays and setbacks. During the seizure, Coppola reportedly told his wife he felt like he was drifting into darkness, a chilling reflection of the themes in the film. This medical emergency forced production to pause yet again, with only a third of the movie completed after more than a year of shooting. Coppola's mental health deteriorated further, and he threatened to take his own life multiple times. These threats were not taken lightly, especially on a set filled with military-grade weapons. His first threat came after learning that his phone service had been cut off due to unpaid bills, a clear sign of his financial desperation. The situation became so dire that the studio took out a $15 million life insurance policy on him, leading Coppola to remark that he was worth more dead than alive. The toll on Coppola's body was just as severe as the toll on his mind. Over the 16 months of filming, he lost 40 kilos. The extreme weight loss was caused by stress, the tropical climate, and inconsistent meals. By the time filming wrapped in 1978, Coppola was almost unrecognizable. His physical transformation was a visible sign of the ordeal he endured, mirroring the descent into madness. He once said, "We were in the jungle. There were too many of us. We had access to a lot of money and a lot of equipment, and we were slowly going crazy." The post-production of Apocalypse Now was a long and exhausting journey, lasting from late 1977 to 1979. Walter Murch, a highly skilled editor, had the nearly impossible job of creating a clear and engaging story from a mountain of footage. He worked with a team of editors that included Richard Marks, Gerald B. Greenberg, and Dennis Jacob, later joined by Lisa Fruchtman. They were based in San Francisco, tirelessly piecing the film together. Murch not only worked as the film's sound designer and re-recording mixer, but eventually took on much of the editing himself. By September 1978, he had edited half the movie, up to the Sampan massacre scene, before shifting to focus on sound design. One of the biggest challenges was that the team never created a full rough cut because they weren't sure how the film should end. If they had, the rough cut would have been 6 or 7 hours long. Murch knew the final movie couldn't be more than 145 minutes to keep it watchable, which meant cutting down an overwhelming amount of material. To help streamline the story, Murch decided to bring back narration by Willard. He even recorded a version himself to demonstrate how it could work. This convinced director Francis Ford Coppola to keep the narration, which helped solve many storytelling issues. The amount of footage they had to work with was mind-boggling. Around 1.25 million feet of film, about 236 hours, arrived from the Philippines. For comparison, most 2-hour movies use only 11,000 feet of film. The team had enough material to make almost 20 full-length films. Coppola had filmed multiple takes of scenes, used different types of film, and captured hours of improvisation. Even the opening sequence, with Martin Sheen in his hotel room, was shot as a personal exercise for Sheen and wasn't originally planned for the movie. The now famous opening shot of napalm explosions was initially dismissed as useless footage until Coppola decided to pair it with the sound of a ceiling fan in Willard's room, creating an iconic introduction. The sound editing added another layer of complexity. The team worked on groundbreaking 6-track sound, which is now called 5.1 surround sound. Almost all the dialogue from the boat scenes had to be re-recorded using ADR because of poor sound quality on location. They even recorded new helicopter sounds to meet Coppola's exacting standards. When the first test screenings happened in late 1978, the reactions were a disaster. Coppola showed a version of the film that was much longer than what would eventually hit theaters. Audiences were split. Some found the film confusing and far too long, while others appreciated its boldness. Things were just as tense at the Cannes Film Festival, where an unfinished version of the movie was shown. Some people loved it, but many walked out, making the atmosphere in the theater extremely uncomfortable. The film's Japanese investors had been expecting a straightforward war movie like The Guns of Navarone. Instead, they were shocked by Coppola's surreal, dreamlike take on Heart of Darkness. This led Coppola to cut significant parts of the film, such as the French plantation sequence and a scene where Willard's crew steals Kilgore's surfboard. Coppola was under immense pressure. He had invested $30 million of his own money into the film, and early reactions made him question everything. However, the feedback from these early screenings helped refine the movie. After trimming and reshaping it, Apocalypse Now premiered in its final form on August 15, 1979. The hard work paid off. It grossed over $80 million in the US and Canada, and became one of the most celebrated films of all time. The film received an astounding 8 Oscar nominations for the 52nd Academy Awards in 1980, a testament to its artistic merit, despite the numerous challenges it faced during its creation. These included Best Picture, Best Director for Francis Ford Coppola, and Best Supporting Actor for Robert Duvall, alongside nominations for Screenplay, Editing, Cinematography, Production Design, and Sound. Winning Best Cinematography and Best Sound Mixing, the film left a lasting mark on the industry, particularly through Vittorio Storaro's groundbreaking use of light and color to reflect the characters' psychological states. The commercial success of Apocalypse Now was equally surprising. It grossed over $80 million in the US and Canada and surpassed $100 million worldwide, saving Coppola from financial disaster. The gamble paid off. The movie's box office earnings not only allowed Coppola to pay off his debts, but also gave him the financial freedom to pursue future projects. This success set a new standard in Hollywood, proving that filmmakers could take creative risks, maintain control over their work, and still achieve commercial success. For Coppola, Apocalypse Now was more than just a movie. It was a turning point that solidified his status as an independent auteur, free from the constraints of traditional studio control. The fallout from Apocalypse Now also changed Hollywood. Along with other troubled productions like Heaven's Gate and Sorcerer, Coppola's film made studios wary of giving big budgets to auteur directors. This marked the end of the new Hollywood era that Coppola had helped define with films like The Godfather. By 2011, he had largely retired from directing mainstream movies, instead focusing on re-editing his earlier works and exploring a passion project called Megalopolis. The trauma of Apocalypse Now wasn't just Coppola's burden. Many crew members returned from the Philippines with symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. They suffered from depression, nightmares, and long periods of unemployment, feeling as though the war they had tried to portray had left a permanent mark on them. Coppola later reflected, they had messed with the war, and it had stained them. After finishing Apocalypse Now, Francis Ford Coppola began work on One from the Heart, a love story inspired by old Hollywood musicals. It starred Frederick Forrest and Terry Garr, with music by Tom Waits. The project was supposed to be simple and safe, with an initial budget of $15 million, a way to secure Coppola's finances after the challenges of Apocalypse Now. However, it didn't turn out as planned. In the 1980s, Coppola directed several movies, each adding variety to his career. He made The Cotton Club in 1984, Peggy Sue Got Married in 1986, Gardens of Stone in 1987, and Tucker, The Man and His Dream in 1988. These films reflected his range, from crime dramas to heartfelt stories. The 1990s brought him back to a familiar world with The Godfather Part 3. Although he didn't want to make it, he needed the money after earlier financial struggles. Despite his reluctance, the film became a significant part of his career, continuing the legacy of the Godfather saga. Now, at 85 years old, Coppola has completed Megalopolis, a science fiction film set in a futuristic New York City. The movie stars Adam Driver and Giancarlo Esposito and cost around $120 million to make. Coppola personally financed it by selling his wineries, showing his deep commitment to the project. While the film has received mixed reviews, it proves Coppola's passion for bold, creative storytelling. Retirement isn't on his mind. He plans to move to London to work on Glimpses of the Moon, a musical based on Edith Wharton's 1922 novel. He describes it as a strange project with a 1930s style. Coppola is also developing Distant Vision, a story about 3 generations of an Italian family and the invention of television. Despite the ups and downs of his career, Coppola remains dedicated to making films that challenge and inspire.